Mdntv, the podcast. Be abreast with now. Never miss a thing with Mdntv, the podcast. We love to keep you in the present with diverse goodies from secular and non-secular subjects of global interest. Join us. Grab more from these series. Listen to our podcasts. The undeniable choice.
Undeniable choice indeed. Today is Reggie Littlejohn, and we are talking about the pandemic treaty, the WHO pandemic treaty. Reggie is going to take us through all this. This is Mdntv shows, and we are running with the times only on Mdntv, the podcast, and I am Major Daughter. Welcome to all our listeners and viewers around the world. Meet us in the comments. We are live there. Engage, send your questions, and share this broadcast as many times as possible. Reggie, welcome, and thanks a gazillion times for saying yes. Please tell our listeners and viewers, who is Reggie and how long have you been doing this?
Well, my name is Reggie Littlejohn. I'm an attorney, and back in the 90s, I represented a refugee from China in her case for political asylum, and she had been forcibly sterilized. And so that's when I founded Women's Rights Without Frontiers, my original organization, which is still very much fighting coercive population control in China and also saving baby girls and widows in China. But then I saw Chinese-style totalitarianism coming to the United States and worldwide through the World Health Organization in response to their COVID-19 pandemic measures. And so I co-founded something called the Sovereignty Coalition, and I also founded and I'm president of a new organization called Anti-Globalist International. And that's where we are taking a global approach to stopping the World Health Organization, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum from their massive power grab, trying to install basically a totalitarian police state worldwide.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you've been doing this for many, many years. Let's start here. Many are unaware. They are not aware of what is really going on because we have so many things that are keeping us busy. Yet a lot is also happening behind our backs. Tell us about this pandemic treaty and what does it mean? What is it all about?
Well, there's two things I would call a treaty. One is the Pandemic Accord, which is, in my opinion, clearly a treaty. The other one is amendments to the international health regulations, which in my opinion are also a treaty because they affect our national sovereignty. And in terms of the international health regulations, they passed on June 1st of this year. So I went to Geneva for the meeting of the World Health Assembly when they were going to be voting on this. And we didn't think that they were going to vote on it because they are required under Article 55 to submit the final text for circulation to all the nations 4 months in advance of a vote. And they submitted this, I don't even know if it was 4 hours in advance of the vote. So they're breaking their own rules, which just sort of shows how lawless they are. But what they also are doing is what passed is these international health regulation amendments will install something called a national international health regulations authority in each country, and that person will have the power to implement the regulations in that country. It also obligates nations to surveil their citizens. So they say that's for health, but this surveillance can go way beyond health. And it also requires nations to address misinformation and disinformation. In other words, to censor their citizens if they say anything that is contrary to what the World Health Organization would want to the World Health Organization's message. Anything that's contrary to that will be called misinformation and disinformation and censored.
What brought about this? How did it come about? There are those who say nations requested for it after COVID-19. Which nations are these?
Yeah, I don't know anything about nations requesting it. I think that the end goal is to establish a digital ID for every person in the world. And the amendments do that because they establish an international interoperable digital ID. It can be either paper or digital, but everybody has to have a health ID. And these health IDs, I believe, are the precursor to digital IDs. And these digital IDs, if you look on the World Economic Forum website, there's a chart there about everything that those digital IDs are supposed to be able to do, which is they say it's going to make everything so much easier for us to access. But what it also means is that if you defy them in any way, if you step out of line, like, for example, let's say you don't want to get the most recent vaccine, or let's say that you disagree with some message from the World Health Organization and you post it online, they can shut you out of all of these things. So you will need a digital ID in order to file your taxes, vote, have a social media platform. Like, in other words, to even participate in social media, you'll need a digital ID, to have a bank account, to carry on online transactions, to travel, to own a communications device such as a cell phone or a computer. And so basically, they can put all this stuff together like the China social credit system, which is how I got involved with this. As I mentioned, my beginning as an activist was in China. So I'm very aware of the China social credit system and how it can be used to silence and trap dissidents. And this digital ID that is currently being rolled out by the World Health Organization and the, and together with the European Union, will do the same thing. It can be used as a platform to do the same thing as the China social credit system, which is a tool of mass surveillance and totalitarian control.
How possible is this? Somebody will say, no, it's just a conspiracy theory. By the way, there are many things that were said to be conspiracy theories, and they came to pass. How possible is this? Is this happening? What can we do? What can nations do? What can citizens do to really stop this? Because this is a very serious threat to our very freedoms.
Yes, it is. That's true. And, it is possible. And in fact, it's already happening in China. They've got the technology. I mean, the technology exists in all developed countries. So it's not like they have to develop the technology. The technology is already there. And what we can do to resist is, I would ask people to go onto my website. It's called Anti-Globalist International. Anti-Globalist International. The website is antiglobalist.net. That's antiglobalist.net. And we have a manifesto which says basically that we're going to resist this this power grab by the World Health Organization, and there are similar power grabs coming from the United Nations as well. And if you sign the manifesto, then that will put you in touch with me, and I will be able to help you take further actions, like maybe contact your legislators and tell them that you don't want this. There is an opt-out period for these international health regulations. It's 10 months. So we need to try to get our governments to opt out. And the best thing to do is to withdraw from the World Health Organization altogether. So that's our aim.
Bringing you the good news all day long. You were tuned in to the hottest station on the planet. Keep it locked.
Yeah, and I understand we have the pandemic treaty, but we also have the international health regulations amendments or something like that. What's the difference? Can you help us understand this?
Yeah, the pandemic treaty is a completely separate document, and it's a brand new document. So the international health regulations, there is, the text comes from 2005. So these are just amendments to previously passed health regulations, but they completely changed the nature of the document. I believe they changed it from regulations into a treaty. But the point is that because they are amendments to regulations, they don't have to go through the treaty process. So in the United States, for example, a treaty can't take effect unless it passes with the advice and the consent of the Senate.
Yes.
The pandemic treaty they don't call it a treaty. They call it an accord. They call it, a convention, a framework, whatever. They really avoid calling it a treaty, I believe, because they want to avoid the treaty process in the various nations, including the United States, where a treaty has to pass by two-thirds majority in the Senate. But the pandemic treaty does different things. Okay. It's not just amendments to regulations. It sets out like a total structure for basically for global governance. So here's a couple things that they have in the pandemic treaty that are not in the international health regulations. In the pandemic treaty, they've got something called One Health. And One Health is an idea that's very convenient for them, that to connect human health with animal health, with plant health, with the environment, okay? That they're all connected, and all of these things, the plant health, the animal health, and the environment, like climate change, all have an impact on human health. Okay, so that sounds innocent enough, but it's not, because what it does is it gives the World Health Organization the pretext to surveil every aspect of life on Earth. That they are surveilling humans, animals, plants, the climate, and the Director General can declare some kind of an emergency or a potential emergency on any of these fronts, and then the World Health Organization, gets to start issuing recommendations, which are non-binding. But if you have a government like we have in the United States, the Biden administration will just start implementing them, and they will use the World Health Organization as cover. So this One Health is anything that could possibly impact human health is part of what the World Health Organization says that they have jurisdiction over. So that would mean even like the economic system, gun control, climate change, anything, supply chains, food, all of that, so that they're trying to take jurisdiction over basically every aspect of life on Earth. So that's one thing that's in the pandemic treaty that's not in the international health regulations. So, and there's another one. Yeah, let me tell you something else. There's something called a pathogen access and benefit sharing system, PABS, pathogen access and benefit sharing. And what this is it is a way of giving incentives to countries to find pathogens with pandemic potential. So in other words, to find germs that could cause a pandemic. And then if you find one or develop one, which is called gain of function research, then you're supposed to share it with the World Health Organization, and they will share it with any number of other, countries and scientific organizations, presumably to develop a vaccine. But the thing is that the more you share a pathogen like that, the more risk you're taking that there's going to be a lab leak. And like for example, COVID-19, I think that it's quite likely that it was a lab leak, and the more labs you have worldwide with all these deadly pathogens, the more you're going to have a constant stream of you'll have a constant stream of leaks and pandemics, which also keeps the big pharma in business, right? Because they are the ones who make the big money off of these pandemics by developing these vaccines. And that's another problem, is that, in the past, when the World Health Organization first started, they were just a very innocent little organization that was funded by the countries, and they dealt with things like sanitation and polio. But since that time, they've been funded in a big way by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Gavi, which vaccinates children, and other big pharma entities. So you have a situation where big pharma is funding the World Health Organization, and the World Health Organization is deciding whether or not a vaccine would be the best approach to dealing with a pandemic. And then if they say, yes, it's a vaccine, we should go with the vaccine, then their own donors are going to be making a whole lot of money. So that's called a conflict of interest. So you can't, people who would make money off of vaccines should not be the ones who are telling us whether or not we need a vaccine.
Yes. what will you say? Are we safe with any of these vaccines? And you just said something critical, and I hope we can have a second bite at this so that we can really find out and look at the role of who, because the World Health Organization has a role, but what role is it? We need to find out. Lastly, before you go, you say the WHO power grab is delayed but not dead. How can we kill it finally?
Okay. The way that it's delayed but not dead is that they delayed the vote on the pandemic treaty. They had wanted to vote on it on June 1st, and they were unable to because they were unable to come to an agreement. And so then people have put out the message, which I think is a false message of victory. This is so great. There's nothing great about it. It's just that they were they just had to delay it. They're meeting again in July to continue their negotiations, and they are determined to pass it this year. So when you say we've already achieved a victory, when actually we're in the middle of the fight, what it does is it causes people to not be fighting anymore because they think that they've won already. It's counterproductive, in my opinion. So I would urge people to go to antiglobalist.net and sign the manifesto, and I will be able to show you different things that you can do. But one of the things that you can do is contact your legislators, tell them that you do not want this pandemic treaty, that it's dangerous, that another thing that this does, both the international health regulations and the pandemic treaty, they set up an unspecified amount of money that developed nations are supposed to be sending to undeveloped nations. So that's a big wild card as well. The ultimate thing I think is the best thing to do is, number one, to defund the World Health Organization by your country, but more importantly, to withdraw from it. So that's what we think is the solution here.
Oh, so that's all we had time for. Go to antiglobalist.net and make your voice heard. Like I always say, if you believe in anything, put your name on it, put your signature on it, put your money on it. If there's anything that you can do, do it right away. Thanks a gazillion times once again, Reggie.
Okay, thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure.
Bringing you the good news all day long. You were tuned in to the hottest station on the planet. Keep it locked.